My name's McIntosh, and I'll start by, I've never done something like this before, so if I repeat myself, hang with me. Like Steve said, if you guys have any questions during my presentation, please ask me, and we'll have something afterwards. I'm originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I've been out in Nevada for about 25 years, 30 years, and I got the best of both worlds today. My full-time job is paramedic in fire department at this beautiful place that you guys are at right now. I'm at the National Security Site, and we have a station way out in the middle of the site. And I've been out there for about 20 years back this time. And great place to work. I take a lot of pride in both of my careers. Getting on to photography, I started wildlife photography about 8 years ago, and ever since then, fallen in love with photography. Started way back before that, but about 4 years ago, I decided to go into portrait photography, wedding and senior photo shoots and everything. So I like shooting everything, so I'm not limited on what I like to shoot, but my love first is wildlife, so that's what I do most of the time. As far as my love for photography, I think it started way back when I was in high school. I was from a little poor town in Pennsylvania where I couldn't afford anything, lived in projects. I used to see people at school taking photography courses, or even at the college taking a photography course, and you had to have your own equipment. So I used to go past that department and go, well, I'd love to do that. But I couldn't afford a 35 millimeter and film and all that. So I kind of passed it by. I said, that's not for me at this time. So it took me another 30 years to decide to buy a camera where I can start doing this. So, my love for photography dates way back. And as far as art, I won a scholarship in high school for Pittsburgh Art Institute. And that was another thing that I passed by because I can afford the scholarship, but couldn't afford the college end of it. So I've always loved art, and the funny thing is, when I was an artist in high school, that's all I drew was wildlife. So I knew this was going somewhere. So, again, as far as picking my careers, I love being a paramedic in the fire department. I've been a paramedic for over 30 years. That's my first love as far as, what I do full time. Mixing the two together has been, an adventure in itself. I kind of look at it like, and I was, somebody had asked me this before, what makes you, really love photography in sense of comparing it to what you do as a paramedic? And I think what really hit me is, as a paramedic over the years, I've seen nothing but sorrow, sadness, death, destruction. Photography gives me that escape. Wildlife is beautiful. People are beautiful, so I look at photography as an escape for my other career too. So I do both and escape for one another. So with that, I hope today is to talk about some of the things that I've learned as far as shooting wildlife and some of the mistakes I've made. We all learn by mistakes, and we're all constantly learning. And I'd like to get that from this presentation with you guys. A lot of you, shoot at different levels. A lot of what I'm going to talk about is common sense, and a lot of it, you may pick up something. That's what I hope you get from this. I like to teach, but I don't, particularly in front of people, I kind of get shy back. But from there, I'll start with some of the things that I feel are the most important things when I shoot wildlife. It comes from the love of wildlife, like I'm sure most of you all have, even if you don't shoot wildlife. So here's some of my pages if you want to look up. I got my portrait photography is on SmugMug and Facebook. That's on also mostly portrait. I do most of my wildlife photography on what they call ViewBug. I don't know if anybody's familiar with ViewBug, but I like some of the photography on there. and Instagram. So if you guys want to follow me on there or pick up some things later on, I'm going to add a wildlife photography to Facebook pretty soon. I think we were talking about this earlier. Social media could be your best friend or it could be your nightmare. I'm kind of bad with social media in a sense, because if I find myself on social media too much, I'm not shooting. So I try to stay away as much as possible from social media, but I do need it. So, you know, I try to keep it a happy medium. First thing I want to talk about is the ethics of wildlife photography. I think that's the most important thing. I've learned from them mistakes that the ethics of, you know, caring about wildlife, that to me, when I first started, I'm gonna admit this, I made mistakes when it came to that. I wasn't educated enough to know when I was doing something wrong, when I would go to an animal and shoot. So I've always had a respectable fear of large animals, or, you know, I wouldn't just go running up to a buffalo like you see people do. But I didn't know what you did when you walked up to a bird's nest. I can tell common sense wise the bird would fly off. But when I was really, you know, when I was real new to this, I was like, oh, he'll come back. So I'm guilty of it. It's not until I started really getting into wildlife photography and learning from birders and learning from people and taking classes that, wow, it's so important to keep your distance and to have that, you know, that boundaries with wildlife, that no picture's worth harming that animal, you know, and that's what I live by now. You know, they come first, nature comes first. And if I can't get the picture, that's fine. That bird is in the nest is gonna live on. Or I'm not gonna stress something to where it runs into something and, you know, there's no coming back. Just a quick story, be respectful to your subject, and that's what I'm talking about. Quick story is me and my wife, Shauna, she's sitting there. We do a lot of backpacking and hiking, so we about 3 or 4 years ago, we were up in Denali National Park, and a lot of photographers, a lot of people, and there was a moose with 2 little babies, and we saw her for like 3 days in a row. She was probably a mile from the visitor center, and she would hang there with babies. Most of the time, the rangers would pull up and tell people, no, you're getting too close. Again, I don't get too close. They can charge. And plus, they're with their babies. Anyway, we're at the camp, and I don't know how we found out, but on day 3 of our trip into Denali, they found the mom dead, shot in the head. And the 2 little babies the next day, me and Shauna saw them, were running around without their mom. The story behind that was somebody was trying to photograph too close, and they charged them, and they had no choice but to pull their gun and shoot the mom. That didn't have to happen. So they said that the guy or gal was taking a picture. That's the story behind it. When I saw them 2 little moose, it broke my heart. Because thank God that Alaska does have they have rescue missions and rescue grounds for the little baby moose, and they raise them and then they put them back out in the wild. But that's a little story that, as far as what I see, and I don't want to repeat. So, respect your wildlife. Do your research. I started doing my research. Now I know what I'm doing. You know, I don't approach a nest. You know, we see eagle nests in Idaho. We camp up in Idaho and Montana, and there's eagle nests I visit every year. I'm well over the 600-yard barrier, and that's where, you know, I'll talk about the long lenses that you have to have, plus an extension tube, plus you can put it down into another mode where you get even more of a reach, and that's what I'll do. You know, I won't go up to that nest. You know the rules, how far you're supposed to stay within any of the bird of prey. You know the distances and know what you're doing and not doing right. And safety. Never put yourself or the animal in danger. You know, nothing gets me more upset when I see they have to euthanize a bear, a lion, because somebody got too close, got bit, now they kill the animal, even if it has babies. And that horrifies me. So, and you know, I can get into this, but it's not all about my wildlife photography, but So to start off with, I like his statement, be a wildlife detective, that's what I did. Even when I was younger, I always wanted to know, how come people see the wildlife that I never see? You know, it took me till I was a teenager to see a white-tailed deer in Pennsylvania, because we were running through the woods and everything, we're not gonna see a deer. So, you know, be a wildlife detective, you know, study your subjects, get you to a point where if you know your wildlife, you'll be able to see more wildlife, be able to photograph more wildlife, and you'll know, you know, this is what I need to do. And so being a detective and studying is what really helped me. Learning about wildlife behavior, learning that, you know, okay, wildlife has certain behavior, whether it be migrating or, you know, where do they stay during the summer, where they stay during the winter. All these things really help me, you know, their habitats, you know, like foxes and dens. A lot of this stuff I didn't know, okay, where do animals go to have their little ones? You know, like I said, some of it's common sense, you know, a coyote might have a den. But there's some that, you know, I had no clue. I was just photographing last summer, I was photographing the grebes and their little ones. It took me years to find out where they go and where do they have their babies and stuff like that. I just didn't know until I started doing my research. And then food sources, water and food. I've always known this, even growing up in Pennsylvania, the more water and food sources, the more animals are going to be around. You know, and them are the things that, you know, you look for when you want to find wildlife, number one. So as far as wildlife behavior, that includes anything, the movement, the interaction with each other, eating, walking, flying, vocalizing. Them are, you know, all common sense things, but these are the things, like I said, that help me get closer to wildlife, get more understanding of what they're doing. You know, mating rituals, things like that. I didn't know what they were doing. You know, see a grebe standing up in the air, flying with each other. I was like, what are they doing? So, you know, migration, moving habits, they're good to study. Kind of finding out that in Nevada, they don't mean as much as what I was used to in Pennsylvania. I know there's a lot of the birds migrate, and it is a pattern here. So you're going to be able to shoot more during the winter, especially in southern Nevada. And but I also see times where, you know, I see a bird in the middle of the summer here, and I'm like, you know, I always photograph the white pelicans in the summer, and I was always taught or told that they migrate out. And most of them, I think, do. But they do stay here too. Me and my wife, we go down the middle of July in our kayaks and we come up on the white pelicans. So, you know, there's some changes here in Nevada, but I think it comes with the same, you know, wildlife do move through an area. They go, you know, from the north to the south, south to the north, depending on the weather. So I think that's overall, that's good, but I think that now I'm open-minded to, you might see something you're not supposed to, or, and just, well, these screen really hacked my pictures. But this is really cool. These snow geese, they're just outside of Havasu, and I was photographing these during the winter, during Christmas, and there must have been 1,000 of them. And I never knew that they were close to here, about an hour and a half. So, you know, it was really nice seeing them. So as far as the habitats, like I mentioned before, dens, you know, if you did come across a den and there's pups, the same thing, keep your distance. I would love to, I'm not gonna lie, I'd love to get a coyote or a fox with her cubs and everything, and I think that's a beautiful picture. If I could achieve both of what I was talking about earlier, I'm going to shoot for it. You know, if I can not disturb them and get that shot, I'd love to get that shot. Trees and bushes, of course, you know, birds. I never knew that turkey I grew up with turkey. I didn't know they kind of roost in the trees, you know. So it's something I learned, you know, maybe 10 years ago. You know, in the water, this picture is the little otters in Monterey Bay. We kayaked out to some kelp forest, and there was tons of little babies laying around and everything. So you kind of float around the kelp forest and take pictures of them. And they were real fun to photograph. And then landscape, where some of your bighorn sheep, deer, where they kind of hang out during the summer and winter. Winter, they tend to come down low in the valleys, and in summer, they head up high into the mountains. So some of the big bucks that you see during the winter, they come down to get food, they come down for warm weather. Further down Mount Charleston, you'll see the bigger bucks during the winter. And as far as habitat here, this is a coyote that I was sitting probably, I want to say 35, 40 yards from, and never knew was there. Never knew. I went out looking for them, and I knew they were there. This is down at the wetlands. I sat down on a hill, I posted on a hill, and I said, I'm going to find a coyote going across here. I sat for 2 hours. The only reason why I saw him is he howled. And I looked over and said, wow, there's a coyote sitting 25 yards from me. and he sat there for 2 hours with me. So, habitat. Now I learned that coyotes can blend into your brush, and that's what I look for, the little white spots and everything. So, yeah, that's kind of embarrassing. Okay, the bighorn sheep, we've got tons of them here. I shoot a lot out of Culver City. Everybody goes to the park. What's nice about the bighorn sheep here is we live on the other side of river mountains. As a matter of fact, our windows, we could see from our windows in our house, we could see the zip line. So we're directly across the river mountains. When me and Shauna hike up the river mountains, they're all over there. They're not just at that park. That herd comes down to that park and feed most of the summer and everything, and then they go back up into the river mountains. I think this was right above the hills of the river mountain, or before the river mountains. And the reason why I took it is, look how they blend in. You aren't going to see that walking by. And so I was lucky enough to see it. I kind of know they're there, but at first I didn't see them. You know, you pick up little white spots and everything, and you try to adjust your eyes. So that's why I took that picture. And then as far as breeding habits and nesting, what time of the year? Small animals with short gestation of incubation mate in the spring and summer, and then larger ones at 6 months, they mate during the fall and give birth in the spring. What I learned about the bighorns this year is some people witnessed them giving birth in February or March. So that's new to me. I did not know that. I usually follow the bighorns in the rutting time, and I think the rut's pretty much on here in southern Nevada. But it confused me to some people that have gotten babies in the middle of winter here. And I believe I talked to a gentleman that got some shots of a brand new baby out in Valley of Fire in February, January, February. So that I have to do a little bit more, because all I have ever done is really follow them during the rutting season. Or follow them when, mostly I don't follow them when they have their babies. And, you know, as far as the nesting and where they could be found and everything, you know, shrubs and trees and on the ground, I kind of look out for that now. As far as, you know, we do, like I said, we do a lot of hiking and backpacking, and a lot of times we go right past them and we didn't even know we were near them. So it's good to know where they're at, or keep looking for them so you can kind of go around them if they're there. But if you do go around and you do see one and you're far enough away, then that's a good opportunity to get a bird's nest shot. This past weekend, we were up in Yuma, Arizona, and me and Shauna hiked out, and I never knew that they perched or nested in the big, I say this wrong, Saguaras. I never even hiked near them, but there was a big red-tailed fox, or red-tailed hawk in the, and he was nesting in one of them. It was amazing to see. So, you know, what I was writing here too is this is a good time to have that long lens when you see a nest. And this was up at Coal Creek, and a few of us knew about this little nest. This was a little long-eared owl nest, and my very good friend Laura turned me on to this nest, and you know, these little guys are in my heart. You know, The sad part about, there is some sadness in wildlife photography. I try to stay away from the sadness of, I know it's nature, but you know, I'm the type that just want to see the happy because of my other career. I see all the bad. Make a long story short, they got there's a bobcat up there, and but they're still in my heart, and I understand the bobcats have to.
That's at Cold Creek?
Not Cold Creek,
Corn
Creek. Sorry about that. It took me a long time to look at this picture again, really, because I love this. I was a mess, but I know it's part of wildlife. If you know me, I've talked about this. I'd love to go to Africa and shoot in a safari. I mean, every one of that, it's a dream come true. But I'm not into the animal catch and kill. I'm not against people that, I have more power to them. They get some amazing photos. But I'd rather, for me, I kind of turn away from them kind of pictures. That's just who I am. I get too sensitive. And these are little creeps that, I was telling you about earlier up in Lake Mead. And I know, short story here, Kippy and I talk about it all the time because we kayak a lot. Me and Shauna, and I was kayaking out on the lake and finding the creeps with their babies. Most of the time when you're on a kayak, they do let you get a little closer. But these little fellas, as soon as they see you on a kayak, they make a like that, and the babies go underneath. The babies go underneath the feathers. So the little corner picture here, right there, that little baby was out for maybe 3 seconds. I mean, I literally had to go, and it was over. You couldn't see her. You can't see her when the feathers are surrounding them. They'll hide. As soon as the mom gives that little warning, they're done. So, as far as their eating habits, learn about what their food sources is, what they like to eat and everything. Common sense. Deer, like where I grew up, they like corn, they like acorns, and then you find that stuff, apples, and that's going to increase your chances of seeing that wildlife because they're going to come to that. When do they eat? Are they nocturnal? Most of the time, that you're not going to see a deer because they're eating at night, or an owl. But early mornings, late afternoons are the best time to catch them going to their food, going to get water. That's when I do a lot of my shooting, is early morning and late afternoon. And then this one is up in, the funny thing is up in Boulder City Pond. But not a lot of people know this, but the same way with these fellas, they'll eat early in the morning, and then when you go up there past maybe 9, 10 o'clock, they sit there. They do come in the water once in a while if there's a lot of fish, and they'll start hunting again. But most of the feeding is done early in the morning, which gives a lot of challenge to what you have and don't have as far as equipment, because early morning is dark outside, what your camera's going to do or not do. So as far as locations, I like to scout my areas. I always take my camera just in case, but I'll commit to a day that I know I want to shoot in an area. If I know that there's bighorn, or if I know there's deer, if I know there's a certain bird I want to get a shot of, I'll scout the area. And when I scout an area, these are the things I like to look at as far as, again, food and water, best time to approach, and where to shoot from. Just because you go into a location with wildlife in it, you should look at where you want to shoot that wildlife. And that's all based on some of the things I'm about to talk about, as far as the best time of the day, depending on the lighting and what type of wildlife you're photographing. Again, are you going to see, most of the time you're not going to see owl, but when you do, it's great, because it's like, wow. And then this is one of the most important things. What's the location of the sun? Is it high in the sky? Is it low? And I'll discuss this a little bit into more detail in a little bit here. So that's like the wetlands during the evening when I'm facing the sun. So that gets me to this. Lighting is everything with me, with a lot of photographers. You know, even at all levels, I think, even when I was starting out, I wish I would have known what lighting meant. Because how many of you guys, gals, have photographed an animal doing something or a bird and it was really cool what they were doing? You got your camera and they're in the shade. I mean, they're in shadow. And then that picture, no matter how good that little action was, the lighting ruins it. So you can have a great picture with bad lighting, makes it a bad picture. You see what I mean? And you can have good lighting with a normal picture, makes it the best light, you know, a better picture. So I look at, as far as these things, golden hour, the position of the sun. I like shooting on cloudy days when it gives nice flat lighting. Some people don't like that because it don't give you the 3D dimension. But it also gives you more opportunities of where you can shoot. If everything's even and the sun is got clouds, it's a diffuser. And a lot of the light is the same, so you can do a lot more locations and get that same shot. And that's what I like about that. It gets a little easier trying to get a shot when it's a little cloudy out or the sun is really low at sunrise. And then I like creative lighting. I like shooting into the sun and making a silhouette. So if you see birds on, like the picture down at, that I just had up down at the wetlands, and you see birds flying, if you're shooting into the sun, you get a real cool silhouette of your subject going by, and it's creative. You know, so shooting into the sun is sometimes an option too. You do have to know your settings a little bit more, because you're going to get, if you don't know what the settings are to get that silhouette or to at least get some detail in it, it's going to, why did I do that? So on the sunny days, what I've learned over the years is keep the sun behind you while keeping yourself between the sun and your subject. So let's say I'm down in the wetlands and I see these birds. I want to make sure the sun's behind me, especially if it's a little bit high. I want to make sure that sun's behind me and I'm between that and my subject, because you're going to light that. You're going to light your subject up, especially on a sunny day. So early in the mornings, I might have to switch sides of the wetlands. Early in the morning, I'm going to switch to the east and then to the west in the afternoon. Did I say that right? Well, anyway, where the sun's behind me. And then, you know, that's going to give you the best possibility to light your subject up. It's going to give you better settings. It's going to give you a faster shutter speed. All these things matter when you're shooting, especially birds. So just one thing to remember, the brightest part of an image is what catches your eye first. So you want that subject lit up in your scene. So if you don't know where to stand, or you don't want, you know, you're just going to shoot at anything, some of the lighting on your subject is going to be dark, and then the rest of the scene is going to be light, and then you don't have a picture. And a lot of these things I'm talking about, like I said, you could do it at all levels and get better pictures. You don't have to be at any level to get a good understanding of what light is to get a nice picture for yourself. You can take it more serious and get into lighting and how you light up your subjects. Or you could, you know, take that picture like I did when I first started and go, oh man, that's trash. You know, it was a nice action, but what am I looking at? And so that comes to this. A good photograph is knowing where to stand. You know, Antoine, one of my heroes. But wow. This one is right above Boulder City. If I would have walked down the hill, or if I would have been down the hill a little bit further, I would have never got this. I came up on these two standing there, and I changed position to get the light in the background. That's all that was. So yeah, knowing where to stand. It wasn't the best lighting that I liked for the photo, but I was blessed enough for it to work out to where at least the RAM had some good lighting on it. So comes to this approaching wildlife. What's a good way to approach it? What do most of you guys do when you see something? I see people doing it all the time.
I run screaming with my arms like this.
And then they run, right? One thing I said that if I ever did something like this, I want to teach people how to approach wildlife, because, like I said, I was guilty too when I was young. the thing that I see most people do is, like in Northern Nevada one time, here's a good example. Me and Shauna were coming home from God knows where. And there was 5 horses with a little colt on the side of the road. Darcy loved this. And they're just feeding and the baby's going along with the mom and everything. But I knew, especially in Northern Nevada, if I pull over and I get out, they're just like birds. They're going to start walking away. So what I like to do is I pull forward maybe even 100 yards, and I'll get behind a bank, and then I'll walk down the road slowly while I'm shooting. That seems to work for me if I'm shooting from the side of the road, but you gotta be careful because you get run over by a car too. But, but what do I see? Like, as soon as other cars came, everybody wants a picture, right? No matter who you are, you want a picture of the beautiful horse with the colt, right? As soon as they get out of the car, what do? It's human nature. Get out of the car and run towards the horses. What's the horse doing? What's the baby doing? They're getting rear end shots. And that's what I look at and go, well, if you understand how to approach them, your chances of getting a better shot are there. You know, and it's human nature. There's nothing wrong with it. I remember one time me and Shauna were at St. John's and we were snorkeling. St. Thomas? No, St. Thomas. Well, we're going over to snorkel, and it was a turtle cove, and there was nothing but sea turtles. And the guy for a half an hour told everybody on the boat, 20 people, here's how you approach them. So we're listening. All 20 people jumped in the water and chased. What he said was, when you get in there, float around and let the wildlife come to you. That's how you do it. Everybody but me and Shauna, we got in. Everybody, it looked like, you ever see what are the little fish that come to surface and they feed up at Lake Mead, the little,
Carp?
no, the little tiny, yeah, like crab or, you know, whatever, like it looked like a feeding fringe out there. There was so many people with arms and everything, it looked like the water was just chopping, like piranhas. And they didn't see anything. So me and Shauna kind of hung out, they're gonna come to us. And sure enough, we had over 8 of them sitting with us, and I come up out of my snorkel and I said, don't say anything, shh. You know, it's just because I knew what was gonna happen. As soon as you say, turtle, everybody, and then what do? You get to see turtles' butts. You know, you get to see the rear end. So approaching wildlife is so important to me. You know, I like to think of it as think like a hunter. How do hunters get close to it? You know, I was raised around a lot of hunters and fishermen, and I learned from them. And I learned how hunters approach wildlife. One of the things, you know, and especially out here, you stay low and go slow. So if you steal and then you walk, you steal. And that's what I learned from a hunter. And it works, it has worked for me for bighorn or mule deer, not so much for the antelope. Antelope see 100 miles, they're gone. And then zigzag approach. A lot of people don't know this, but same thing, if you're approaching wildlife and I'm going straight at you, they know, they can tell you're looking at them. Birds, animals, they can tell when you see them. Now when you come in slow and you zigzag, and I've learned this and I've gotten really good shots from this, is I'll just like I did with the bighorns, I'll walk with them. And then I won't look at them, I won't give them eye contact, and then I turn, and then I walk back. And then I turn, and that's a zigzag approach. It works for me. I read about this, and I said, wow, that's a good technique. So I've been using it for a couple of years now, and it really works. Wearing camouflage. The only time I wear camouflage is whenever I'm gonna post. Obviously, if you're walking around down the wetlands or, you know, you got all this stuff on, you know, camouflage is not gonna help you as much, but camouflage really gets you close. I remember one year wearing camouflage, sitting in Pennsylvania in the woods trying to look for animals, and a little eastern screech owl landed on my shoulder and sat there. And I was like, and the reason why I think he or she caught is my fingers were camouflaged. So I was moving like this, and it came in to see what I was. It couldn't tell what the rest of me was until its eyes got big and said, I'm on a human. And then it was gone. Approaching wildlife by vehicle, very good way to approach wildlife. We go up to Idaho every year, and the wildlife reserves up there have drive-arounds, and they're elevated. So much wildlife just being in your car. A good thing to do if you're doing that is don't go over the edge. Then I have to play the other job. First thing you want to do far as with your car is go slow. If you see something, stop. Watch behind you because somebody could tell before hitting your rear end. Take a sandbag or something and use that sandbag for a rest for your long legs, and it really works well. Another thing that's me and Kitty talk about is kayaking. There's a lot of opportunities with the kayak. Lake Mead, we kayak out there and we come across a lot of wildlife. If you float by and you don't go towards them, same thing. They're just going to sit there. And you're sometimes you're going trying to get out of their way because you get so close because they don't view boats out there or kayaks as a threat. So, like I said, the wildlife preserves have it. Stay in your vehicle, go slow. If you do get out of your vehicle, they're going to go, especially birds of prey. I mean, how many of you have seen a big hawk on the pole and you want to get a better shot and you pull over and you get out of the car? It's gone. So if you can stay in your car, do that. And safety first, watch what you're doing. And then I mentioned that, as far as in kayaks or the boats, great for getting to locations you can't get to from land. And it takes a little practice, especially at Lake Mead, because if you guys know Lake Mead, by noon it's going like this, and I'm going like this. Kippy has the luxury of being up north with a nice clear glass water. So again, posting one spot, let the wildlife come to you. This was at Coronado Islands, and we were scuba diving, and just scuba diving allows you to get close. And all you do is just sit there. If you go like this or you go swimming towards them, they're not going to come to you. These little baby seals, they came right up to me and was eating my GoPro. So that was awesome. So yeah, and this one, like I said, be prepared on all levels of wildlife photography. You don't have to be a serious wildlife photographer, but if you're prepared, you'll get better wildlife shots. Always dress for the weather conditions, especially up north, or here in the summer. A lot of times I was out during the middle of summer trying to catch a grease, and it's 110 degrees, and I'm like, what am I doing? I don't have a long sleeve on it. I know better. I know better than just being exposed to the environment. Knowing what equipment you need before you go out there, and that's real important. Always study what equipment that you're going to need based on what you want to shoot that day. Food and water, that's obvious. Physical fitness and mentally prepared. Physical fitness, how many of you guys, do you go out shooting or walking and with your camera and a couple hours go by and you're like, because I don't know about you guys, but even my long lens, it's not the real heaviest of long lenses. I get tired. So physical fitness, I think, is for any kind of activity, especially wildlife photography is like number one. A lot of times back when I was a paramedic in Pennsylvania, deer season was our hot season as far as heart attacks and cardiac arrest, because the hunters never go out. They go out one day a year. They carry their gun, they carry all these clothes, food and everything, and then they have their heart attack out in the middle of nowhere. And I can't tell you how many calls I've been on because people just don't follow the physical fitness as far as what they want to do. So physical fitness is real important. Mentally prepared, this is the hardest for me because I'm such a scatterbrain. You have to get mentally prepared if you really want to get serious and go out and shoot. So whenever I do it now, I plan ahead. What are some of the things that I want to take that day based on the wildlife that I'm going to shoot? I check all my camera settings before I leave. I don't know how many times in the past when I first started, my camera was set in something stupid. You know, and then I took the shot and went, oh, nice blurry animal. And I should check your gear. I have forgotten batteries. I've forgotten extra cards. And I think one time I forgot my camera. So, you know, these are the, like I said, I'm learning, you know, I'm doing this by the mistakes I made, how I'm teaching this or, you know, presenting this. You know, think about the shots you want to get that day. Whenever I go out and shoot the bighorns, I typically during the rut, I like the ram shots, the headbutting shots, or I like the action shots where they're all running. I think about them, and that helps me prepare for my settings, what kind of settings I want to use. Clear your mind. I mean, no matter what type of stuff you shoot, clear your mind. I mean, Linda had some good points on the stuff that you love to shoot, like she did the benches and everything. I bet you when she goes to shoot these, you know, she's got a clear mind. She's in a place all to herself. That's what I do. You know, clear your mind, get away from the hustle bustle, turn your phone off, and really relate to, you know, getting involved in what you shoot. Feel it. You know, don't go out there and say, oh, I'm hungry, or somebody's supposed to call me in 5 minutes. And you're gonna miss shots. Like I said, avoid distractions like the cell phone. Checking your shots in your live view. I'm guilty of that. I always check my Instagram. See, I'm stuck on social media. I check my histogram to make sure my lighting's good. But sometimes I find myself, and this is a huge mistake I've made, I find myself checking the pictures. Okay, let's see if the picture worked out nice. Oh, that was a good one, let me check it. And right in front of me, something happened. It happens all the time. Don't do that. I'm guilty of it, and it hurts because I walked away and went, oh my gosh, I was checking my pictures and look what just happened that I missed. Okay, as far as shooting with others, remember to keep focused even when you're shooting with others. Whenever I'm serious about what I want to shoot, I'm by myself because I have to get, like I said before, totally in the mind of what I want to shoot. And shooting with a lot of people and everything is a great social thing, and I love to do it, but I also have my down times where this is exactly what I want to focus on that day. So I tend to go out and shoot by myself and commit that day to just me and the animal or whatever I'm shooting. But I also love to get involved in, you know, going out doing, so shooting with others. I just think that there's a lot of distractions sometimes if you really want to get that shot that you've been waiting for. So it's a judgment call for that day, whatever you want to shoot. Okay, as far as this skill in photography is acquired by practice and not purchase. I tend to agree with both. I think you have to purchase some things, but yeah, I love that statement. So here's my camera bag. No. So equipment for wildlife, your camera, your longest lens. It doesn't mean you need a 500, 600. What do you have for your longest lens? They recommend anything from 100 and up is considered more of a zoom. 200 is even good, but you're going to work harder if you don't have the longer lens, but you can still get a good wildlife shot with 100 millimeter, 200 millimeter. You just have to work a little bit harder. Tripods are so important. A tripod, you know, you have to have a good tripod. And I've learned the hard way. I've talked about it with them. I bought cheap tripods, the ones that didn't hold up, and then I'm going to buy another one. And that has taught me that I kind of go overboard only because I want to support it for a very long time. I want that purchase to be a one-time purchase, and it's worked with my last one after 100 of them. So, real quick, this is my setup for it. It looks a little overkill with how big this tripod can support. This is just a 2 to 500, so it's not going to be heavy as Nikon 600, but it can hold. That's what these are meant for too, is a hold. But this has lasted me forever, and I'm going to have this probably if I take care of it until I'm retired or longer. And that's why I went to something like this. The gimbal on here is what I like to shoot with, as the head. It gives you a free motion. when you're shooting, and it lets you pan while you got it on. It lets you pan while you got it on your tripod and give it nice smooth panning action. So I always say this: equipment. You're the number one equipment, the photographer. You could get a good shot with one of these if you know what you're doing. You know, especially with the phone, if you know your lighting. If you don't know your lighting, the phone is horrible. But I've learned this too. When I was first starting, everybody said, you're the most important thing, you're the one's gonna make that picture. I've also learned that equipment does help. And I'm gonna be honest with you, it helps. You just have to work a little harder if you don't have it, but you can still get it. So what's the best cameras? Nikon's, Canon's, Sony's, who's the best? I think they're all the best.
The one in your hand.
Huh?
The one you have.
Yeah. But as far as, the equipment part of it, I think every one of them shows their abilities. Every one of them has great focus abilities, tracking, everything. They just have a different way to go about it. So when somebody says Nikon versus that, I got a little Sony with me today. I love it. And if you are looking at DSLRs and point and shoots, the only thing I would suggest, and I learned over the years, is frames per second. If you're going to shoot birds, look at the frames per second. A lot of point and shoots have faster frames per second than any of our DSLRs. High ISO capabilities. I didn't know what that meant when I first started, but a camera that has a lot of ISO capabilities, like 3200 up to 64, will give you that time when you need it in low light, and you'll still be able to get that shot.
Are you close to done?
Oh, okay. Yeah, sorry about that.
No worries.
So built-in lenses, 200 and up, and weatherproof. And it all depends on your budget, what you can afford and what you can't afford, okay? And then become a technical geek with your camera. Learn your camera, and I could go over settings with you, but that's a whole nother class. Just learn your camera, what your camera's capable of. I suggest learning the triangle of shutter speed, aperture, and all that, okay? And, when you get down to getting the technical part, then you can be creative and get more shots. So I did have a little bit more, but that's fine.
You're a little over on time.
Okay.
Can it be quick?
Hmm?
Can it be quick?
Yeah, let me skip over.
I'm sorry, I'm not trying to cut you off.
No, I'll skip over some of the stuff that I think are, basically that I did as far as, repeating myself. And tripods, like I said before, just remember a good tripod is your best friend. It's going to get you through everything. Mono parts are good. This is my camera bag, 2500, 7200 tripod with a gimbal head and batteries. There's a couple pictures of what I carry most of the time with me. This is just what I carry. And like I said, take control of your camera, learn your settings. The more proficient you are with your settings, the better you're going to be at capturing that wildlife picture. And shutter speeds, handheld, practice your handheld skills. And then I like to use, this is me, I like to use a shutter speed of 1/1600 or higher for birds in flight. Larger birds, I go a little bit down. I'll get through some of this. I did want to talk more about as far as settings, but like it could be a whole other class. There's some of my handheld. These are all handheld in flight in a ramp shot up lifting. And just practice your settings. Don't go out there not knowing your camera. And then just real quick, an image tells a story. The subject, composition, arrangement of elements, rule of thirds, and lighting, and eliminate unwanted clutter. And emotion in wildlife is beyond. I love emotion in wildlife. If you can capture that, you're doing a good job. And there's a mom with her baby up in Glacier National Park. We were hiking up there. There's little kelps, or the little. And remember, the subject has to be the clearest. It has to be the one that stands out. And that depends on lighting, sharpness, movement, depth of field. And that's just a repeat of some of the depth of field I was talking about. And your subject can be in close in. I wanted the subject to be the bighorn's eye. So you can always go a subject within a subject if you're shooting wildlife. And study composition, creative framing, clean background. You know the rule of thirds, everybody know the rule of thirds. Place them in the rule of thirds, it makes it more interesting. Okay, it could be this is about it. And if you guys love macro photography, look into, macro lens, long focuses for critters, simplifying your background, and patience. In every walk with nature, one receives far more than he seeks. And that's what I feel. And know all your equipment, know and love your subjects. I love wildlife. I take it on a heart level. So that just makes me so blessed to, that I'm doing this. So anyway, sorry, I went over a little bit, kind of repeat myself, but I would like to thank Kippy and Focus for having me speak. And I hope you guys learned something out of this. And if you guys have any more questions, I can be more in detail with the settings that I use, because I run out of time because I talk too much.